Hello and welcome to the Canadian Federation of Agriculture's virtual press conference. I would first like to introduce to you Michael Graydon, President and CEO of Food and Consumer Products of Canada.
As the voice of Canada's largest manufacturing workforce, FCPC has taken a leading role working with partners across government and the food sector during this unprecedented challenge. We've worked hard to keep up with record spikes in demand for food, help employees stay healthy and continue upholding the most rigorous food safety standards, and reassure Canadians that food production and capacity are strong. Building on this immediate reaction, we are now intently focused on bolstering resilience in the food supply and Canada's long-term recovery. That's why FCPC is proud to join the Canadian Federation of Agriculture today in calling for immediate action to support the frontline and our food supply, Canada's farmers. We applaud government's collaboration and consultation thus far to help keep food moving from farm to factory to store and ultimately to Canadians. As food processors, we purchase 40% of Canada's agricultural output, and we know smooth farm operations are key to maintaining steady supplies of affordable food for Canadians. Food processing is deeply connected with Canada's rich farming tradition and abundant agricultural resources. We rely on Canada's farmers and farm workers as the first link in the food supply chain that will feed Canada through the coming difficult months. In turn, 1 in 8 Canadians rely on the food economy for their livelihood, and all Canadians rely on the essential food that we make. But there are real challenges that require immediate support to prioritize keeping agriculture and food strong now as an engine for our post-COVID recovery. We are confident we can meet the challenges of these difficult times. We can do this, and we must. Anything less will harm our rural communities, our cities, and all Canadians now and well into the future. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mary Robinson, President of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the 200,000 farm families the Canadian Federation of Agriculture represents. As you well know, COVID-19 is a major worldwide crisis. Canada's farmers respect and applaud the collaborative efforts of all levels of government to quickly mobilize their resources to protect Canadians' health. Probably like many of you, I have people I love who are on the front lines of this health battle. I send a heartfelt thank you to the courageous frontline doctors, nurses, and healthcare staff who are closest to the fight against this unprecedented pandemic. Appropriately so, the health and safety of Canadians is and should be our government's top priority. Ensuring the recovery of people who are ill and flattening the curve are government's greatest responsibilities. But with so much uncertainty around the globe, the Canadian Federation of Agriculture is calling on the federal government to immediately also prioritize food production. We must ensure Canada's domestic food supply is secure, not only for the duration of this battle, but long into the future as well. As farmers, we have carefully considered this message today. We do not mean to create panic. At the same time, it would be irresponsible not to sound the alarm about the realities Canadian farmers are facing. In times of economic crisis and global uncertainty, Canadians have always been able to depend on farmers to do what we do best, grow food. Today, Canadian farmers need immediate, meaningful help from our federal government to continue fulfilling that responsibility. Agriculture, the foundation of our overall food supply, is at this very moment in time at a tipping point. If we do not, as a nation, address the rising challenges immediately, Canadian consumers could see a decrease in the amount and variety of food at their local grocery stores, as well as higher prices in the months ahead. These are, without question, extraordinary times that require extraordinary measures. Farming families need immediate help. and support to ensure our domestic food supply remains reliable and secure for Canadians coast to coast. Our first concern is the ongoing labor shortage and predictability, and how that is impacting farms and food processing. Normally, spring is a time of great optimism and promise for farmers. But this year, many Canadian farmers do not have enough workers to consider planting a 2020 crop. In addition, farmers are seeing alarming uncertainty in their markets. Not knowing if we will be able to get to market the food we grow is eroding the confidence our farmers need to invest the hundreds of millions of dollars necessary to plant a crop. Difficult decisions are being made right now about whether to plant a crop or leave fields unplanted, or plant crops that require less labor and costly inputs, like growing soybeans for animal feed instead of tomatoes for people. Another fear is that if planting does go ahead, will harvesting and processing be possible without sufficient labor? Or will crops rot in the fields, as we are seeing now happening in other countries? We applaud government's announcement on Monday outlining the assistance to help offset some of the significant costs to isolate temporary foreign workers as they arrive in Canada. This is a good first step. Much more needs to be done. The second issue threatening Canada's food system is the increasing and unexpected costs COVID-19 is generating for Canadian farmers. There are increased costs associated with purchasing the necessary PPE for our workers, increased costs by being forced to keep livestock for an extended period of time due to reductions in processing capacity. Canadian farmers are feeling increasingly stressed. In fact, right now, some farmers are so worried about the mounting challenges, they are strongly considering halting their farming operations altogether. This is a potential tragedy, one Canada cannot afford. If we have learned anything in recent times, it is that the domestic supply of goods, food, is the one true source on which we can bank. Canada, this year more than ever in my lifetime, will need Canadian farmers producing food and setting our country up to best weather this storm. CFA and our members are asking government to create an emergency fund, a financial backstop, so farmers in need can access funds to help them overcome mounting costs. Canadian farmers need to hear a clear commitment from government to instill in them the necessary confidence for the 2020 planting season. Clearly, government officials must focus on the recovery of people who are suffering from COVID, as well as preventing the spread of this pandemic. But government must also ensure they are being strategic with regard to domestic food security. Canadian farmers feel we have a responsibility to tell Canadians what is at stake. Canadian farmers are resilient, hardworking, and industrious by nature. We are not ones to seek handouts. We look to government only as a last resort. People working in agriculture take great pride in the fact that every day we feed Canada. Regardless of what you eat for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, all of it starts on a farm. Right now, in these unprecedented times, we know people have many concerns. Worrying about access to healthy, nutritious food should not be one of them. That is why we are drawing attention to this situation now, before things become more dire for farmers and ultimately for consumers. We can, providing we work together, ensure our food system is secure and our grocery stores continue to be well stocked with healthy and affordable food raised by Canadian farmers. The Canadian Federation of Agriculture stands united with all Canadians in the fight against COVID-19. We are asking Canadians, we are asking you, to contact your local MP and tell them how much you value our food supply. Tell your elected representatives that Canadian farmers need support and backing now. We need to know government, as it has done for other industries, is there for our farmers so that we can continue to do what we do best, grow food to feed all Canadians. I want to thank you all for participating in CFA's first ever virtual press conference. I will now begin taking questions, which will be given to me by our moderator. We will be taking questions in English first, and then I will hand the question and answer period over to the president of UPA, Marcel Groslo, who will answer any questions from the press in French. Thank you. Let's begin.
Mary, our first question is from Mark from the Germination magazine. He's asking, how can Canada's seed industry help?
Thank you. What we need from all of the food supply chain is we need to make sure everybody does what they can to keep business going as usual. We're seeing disruption in processing now that's causing concerns for farmers because they can't see the flow of their goods go through to completion and then from there transported to market. And we would look for the same kind of attention to detail on the supply side to make sure that crops can go in the ground if farmers do have the confidence to pursue that this year.
We have a question from Jeremy Hainsworth with Glacier Magazine. Do you expect temporary foreign worker shortages? And do you expect it to be challenging to hire locals to fill in those shortages?
Thank you, Jeremy. We do know that temporary foreign workers have begun to come into the country. We understand there has been a couple of hiccups in different countries as far as people getting to Canada. We understand the people who have arrived have been taken either to a centralized isolation location, which is being offered in some provinces, or to farm locations where the proper measures have been put in place to offer that isolation. In regard to hiring domestic workers, we are working with government to come up with incentives to encourage Canadians who would not normally seek jobs in agriculture to do so this year.
We have a question from Kelsey Johnson from Reuters. The Cattlemen's Association has suggested Canada rebuild the BSE set-aside framework to deal with possible packing capacity shortages. Would that help?
Thank you, Kelsey. We have certainly been in close discussions with our friends at the Canadian Cattlemen Association and very alarmed to learn of the restrictions they're seeing in their processing. And we understand that they have been in touch with government, suggesting that this model that was built to respond to BSE be rolled out in this situation. And I believe cattlemen feel that that would be an effective response to the situation right now, as well as they will need some additional help, obviously, as there are costs involved in maintaining those animals as they wait.
We have a question from Alex, Ontario farmer. How much money is needed in the emergency fund?
Alex, that is a great question, and it is one that is difficult to ask. I liken it to, I wonder when health is asked that question, how they can possibly forecast what challenges they're going to face. It's very difficult to forecast the expense of that, but we do know that with healthcare, we will be making those investments to ensure that Canadians are kept healthy and safe. And with food, we're asking government to treat food production much the same way, second only to health, that as we respond to people's illnesses and having to flatten the curve, we also have to feed 36 million Canadians every day, and we have to make sure that we're in a position to keep doing that.
One final question from Farmtario, from John. What are you hearing from government? How optimistic are you with the large expenditures facing government now?
John, thank you for the question. I think what we could focus on is the fact that when the dust settles on this experience and Canada comes through having fought this pandemic, We want to ensure that our economy is best positioned to recover. And we know from the report that Dominic Barton submitted several years ago, Canadian agriculture is incredibly well poised. The entire agri-food sector, which obviously includes processing and all of the value add that happens to the food that farmers grow. Investments in agriculture are going to really put Canada in the right spot to recover from all of these unprecedented expenditures we've had to appropriately make to deal with COVID. Thank you for the last. Oh, okay.
Senators has suggested allowing Canadians to work on the farms while keeping their CERB benefit. Do you believe that would work?
We do have a proposal into government that's not completely out of step with what Senator Griffin and other senators have put forward. We certainly appreciate the senators making this such a high priority and coming up with important options like this. And anything we can do to help Canadians seek those jobs or culture, maybe not even just this year, but for the longer term, would be wonderful.
Thanks, Mary. Those are all of the questions I have.
Thank you. I now turn it over to the president of UPA, Marcel Groslo, and Marcel will answer any of the questions we have in French. Thank you, Marcel.
Oui, bon, pardon. Alors oui, bonjour. Je suis prêt à prendre vos questions. Alors,
Diane. Pourquoi est-ce à Ottawa de prendre en charge la quarantaine des travailleurs étrangers? Est-ce qu'une somme de 1500 $ par travailleur est suffisante pour les entrepreneurs?
bon, alors on avait discuté avec le gouvernement différentes options pour sécuriser la venue des travailleurs ici et sécuriser aussi les entreprises agricoles. Il y a eu un protocole de convenu entre les gens de la santé publique et la CNESST pour assurer que ce protocole-là fait la protection des travailleurs et des entreprises. Et ce qui a été convenu, donc, de l'aide supplémentaire, là, 1500 $ par travailleur. Idéalement, si on avait pu loger les travailleurs à leur arrivée, ça aurait peut-être été l'idéal, mais la situation actuelle est quand même permet quand même aux travailleurs de se rendre sur les fermes et espérons-le de pouvoir commencer à travailler bientôt.
Nous avons une deuxième question de Catherine Lévesque de la presse canadienne. Demandez-vous aux Canadiens et aux Québécois de s'enrôler comme travailleurs agricoles pour aider la production et éviter les pénuries d'aliments?
Oui, on va faire appel aux travailleurs, aux citoyens québécois pour compléter la main-d'œuvre nécessaire sur les entreprises agricoles cet été. On espère pouvoir lancer cet appel-là bientôt. On est en discussion à la fois avec le gouvernement fédéral et provincial, mais force est de constater que tous les travailleurs étrangers ne pourront pas venir et qu'on aura besoin de main-d'œuvre locale pour compléter. Et il est urgent de donner un signal rapidement aux Québécois pour ce travail-là, puisque ça va permettre aux entreprises agricoles d'ensemencer et d'avoir confiance dans les prochains mois pour pouvoir rendre cette production-là à terme.
All of the questions that we've received. Thank you for attending the Canadian Federation of Agriculture's virtual press conference. To have a more in-depth interview with a CFA representative or for any further media inquiries, please contact Lori Carson, Director of Communications and Stakeholder Relations. Thank you for attending.